Oh, well, then you will be the genius.
Hi guys, Matt LaMarsh here with Keller Williams First Atlanta. Hope you guys are doing well. If you have a business or a nonprofit that you'd like to see featured here, please feel free to give me a call at 678-687-4397 or shoot me an email to matt@mattlamarsh.com. Thanks so much. Why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Great. Well, I'm John Stoj, and I live here in Sandy Springs. Currently, I'm in the financial services arena, but when I first moved down here, I came down here to manage money for ING, now Voya, and that's what brought me to Sandy Springs versus Atlanta proper. And I was very specific when I moved down here to have a good commute, and that is before I understood what the commute really meant down here in Atlanta. But having grown up in New Jersey, a very packed state, and packed with traffic, and lived in Manhattan, lived in Chicago, I knew that for me a key was to live close to work, so that I could spend my work time at work and my home time at home, and as little time in traffic as possible. So ING's just up the road, found a house in Sandy Springs, and that's where I settled down. Turned it out to be just really the best accidental decision that I ever made, because if I had moved to Atlanta and lived, say, in the city, I can't say that I would still be here 17 and a half years later. I think one of the things that kept me here, really, other than my wife, was Sandy Springs. And it was not long after I moved here was when Sandy Springs was actually incorporated as a city. I wasn't part of that incorporation, but I voted for it, and I was really excited to see the direction that the city was taking, public-private partnership, all that kind of stuff. I really think is something that can propel an area, not just economically, but also from a quality of life standpoint, because of as citizens you can have more input. It feels like you don't get taxed as much. There's a lot of benefits to it, and so I've really enjoyed living here. Heck, I enjoyed living here so much that in 2013 I did run for city council in Sandy Springs, which was a fantastic experience. I didn't win, but that was, as a lot of things in life, a blessing in disguise. I had a good, really just awesome, actually, not just good, an awesome experience running, meeting hundreds of fellow Sandy Springs residents, knocking on literally thousands of doors, and just meeting people and finding out, what makes the city tick, what people are looking for from their city, and that was really great. I just had a ball, it was. I feel like not everybody should win elected office, but everybody should run, because it gives you a renewed sense of place for where you live, and I think you're either going to want to stay and become even more involved, or heck, you might want to move.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the most interesting story or thing that came out of the door knocking? Because that's something that, it's probably up there with public speaking that not many people are comfortable doing. But what's one of the best things that came out of the door knocking for you, or what kind of opened your eyes to what people love about this area?
Well, I think there's two parts to that question. What was the best thing about it? The best thing was when people would invite you into their homes, and on hot days or evenings, pour you a glass of tea, and then they would just really start to talk to you about their history and their history with the area. And for me, that was the really interesting part, learning more about how in a certain area of Sandy Springs, for instance, the minimum lot size was 2 acres for the longest period of time, and it had something to do with horses and farming. And there were people that remembered people riding horses on Mount Vernon back and forth, and learning things like that is fantastic. And I'm a people person. I like meeting people, and so I don't mind it. I would get scolded by my campaign manager for doing it, because you're supposed to knock on as many doors as possible. Somebody invites you in, and you have a 20-minute conversation with them. You're not knocking on doors. But you know what? I didn't want to stop doing that. So that was fantastic. And the thing that they liked about Sandy Springs is probably largely the thing that we all like about Sandy Springs, if we like it, which is, here we are, top 5 city in Georgia, 100,000 plus people, but it feels like a small town still. You can go to city council meetings and you can meet similar people who are involved. You can get to know who's interested in their communities. But then you also realize that people are interested in neighborhoods. Maybe they don't get involved in government, but they're in their neighborhood community. There are still neighborhood parties on the holidays. I think we know, not just on Halloween, but you can go and see from neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood, people are getting together and bringing their community together, and it's really great to see, especially for me, having, I think, lived on both ends of the spectrum. I grew up in New Jersey, although it's a densely populated northern state. My town was less than 5,000 people, and so we didn't have to travel an hour to get to the next town by any stretch of the imagination. We drove, and there was another sign for another town and another town and another town. But the people who were involved in that town, in the Little League or Boy Scouts, they were the same people, because it was, again, 5,000 people, and you knew who the mayor was, and you knew who the scoutmaster was, and you knew your teachers, and you pass them in the street, whether it's going to church or whatever. So I love that part about growing up in my little town in New Jersey. Then moving to Manhattan and Chicago, you don't get that as much. You can have interactions with people, obviously, and there is a sense of neighborhood in those cities too, without a doubt, not to take away from that. But you'll never have that small town feel. And so now here we are in Sandy Springs, touching Atlanta, right? I would say the most vibrant city in the South, and we have access to all that, but we have our small town feel. We don't have to get involved with Atlanta politics as much as people in Atlanta would need to. And now we have, a growing community here in Sandy Springs as well. From a business community, we've always been blessed with a good corporate community, but now we've got really great restaurants. We've got, services. There isn't as much reason to have to leave Sandy Springs to go to Atlanta as there was, 10 years ago, or certainly, when I moved here in
Absolutely.
2002. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of been one of the common threads through this whole series, right? And the business owners that I've talked with and the leaders that I've talked to is that it's a big city that feels like a small town, because geographically, we're on kind of the south side right now, but you go 10 miles north and we're still kind of in Sandy Springs over in the Panhandle, right? Over northeast. But that's the one thing, reoccurring theme that I'm starting to see here is that, again, big city that feels like small town, where there's these little pockets, and really we're in kind of the middle of one down here on the south side that's growing. And to your point, the development, especially business development, has gone just bonkers down here. Economic development has gone nuts in this area, and I think it's that revitalization in those pockets is really, really important, and it's something we've certainly talked about on the north side as well. But talk a little more about this area. What for those that don't know, we're kind of on the south side, what I think is District 6, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So we're near Wyuka, kind of the edge of Buckhead. So you've got Chastain Park here. You've got, of course, the Roswell corridor that leads up to 285 there. But what's your favorite thing about this area in particular of Sandy Springs, and maybe your favorite restaurant, stuff like that?
Yeah. No, well, even I think until I got to know more parts of Sandy Springs, I was definitely an ITP guy. And so the fact that I could be in Sandy Springs, avoiding the city of Atlanta and sundry issues, that has goes along with that, and still be inside the perimeter, that was just for me the greatest thing. And so avoiding the traffic, I can take surface roads. If I don't want to get on the highway, I don't have to get on the highway. And now, we do have all we need. Frankly, we've in my little area, in this ITP area, we've got now what I think is one of the best bakeries in the area. For instance, Cafe Vendome, and Hamid, who owns that and runs it, is just a fantastic fellow. And my wife and I are kind of foodies, and so one of the things, if you're a foodie and you don't appreciate good bread, then I'm not sure how you could be a foodie. And so when I first moved here and first got married, I think there was only, in our opinion, pretty much one place almost in the entire city of Atlanta to buy bread, and that was Star Provision. So you'd have to drive all the way on down to the west side to get a baguette that was worth eating. And that's a good baguette.
Yeah.
But here we are, right across from Fountain Oaks Kroger Shopping Center. There's a bakery staffed by French folks who bake baguettes that are really right up there with the ones you'll get in France. And heck, we were in Paris a month ago, and I'll say that I can confirm it's right up there. And then having eaten all over the country, be it in San Francisco or New York, again Chicago, I think it's right up there with any of those places as well. So not having to do that is pretty fantastic. And then it's just, pizza's another one. Atlanta has grown as a pizza town. That was another thing. When I first moved down here, I thought there were two places to get pizza in the entire city of Atlanta that were worth. I'm from New Jersey, and if you don't know New York pizza, the pizza that people usually think of as New York pizza is really New Jersey. It started on the Jersey Shore. That's where the pizza came from. The pizza that people are now getting to know and love, the coal oven pizza, the crispy crust, that was New York and Brooklyn pizza. But the foldable, bendy, eat the slice of pizza, that was New Jersey before it became more popular in Manhattan for commuters. But that aside, we've got, again, in Sandy Springs, I mean, I'll go to Hearth and have just a delicious pizza, or, believe it or not, a burger. And that's right, off of Hammond. There's so many places that we can get. And now we've got steakhouses and Casa Cielo that just open. Where else can you get delicious, high caliber Oaxacan food? Nowhere else in this area. You can't even go to Buford Highway and get that.
Right.
So it's really great. And here we are again in Sandy Springs. Whether you live on the north side or whether you live and you have to actually cross 285 to get out there, which isn't the worst thing in the world. It's just a great place to enjoy.
Fantastic. So tell us a little more about you. What you guys do as a family here, and your kind of off time or downtime, and then maybe a hobby or something else that might connect.
Yeah. Well, my wife's a physician, so she works crazy hours. So when we have downtime, and we have a 5.5-year-old right now, and so when we have downtime, a lot of time it's spent in our backyard. Depending on the time of year, it's gardening. That's a big thing that we like to do. We like to putter about the yard. We just put in our first tomatoes yesterday.
Nice.
So these are the things that again we love to do. The fact that you can live in a city that's as close to Atlanta, and have, a little plot that you can actually till and do your own gardening. That's I think a luxury that not a lot of people are afforded in this country. So that's something we really like to do. And then it's just, when you've got a 5-year-old, you're doing what he wants to do a lot of the time. So it could be going to just walking to Chastain Park and going to the playground. I mean, that's a big thing right now.
Absolutely.
In our life.
Is that his park of choice?
Do you know he likes 2 parks? He likes that park. He calls it the park with the treehouse because if anybody's familiar with it, a couple of years ago they did a little renovation in the playground at Chastain, and they built this structure that he calls the treehouse. But the other park that he really enjoys going to, that he calls the big park, is Morgan Falls in Sandy Springs. So we'll drive up there, and it's a few extra minutes drive, but it's such a great park, great facility, that he loves spending time there, and we're starting to do outdoors style activities. In terms of camping and hiking, and so those were his first hikes around that little hiking trail around Morgan Falls Park. So I think we went around the first time we went around that he was 3, and I was like, how far is this? But now he pops around it, and we went the other week to a hike in Cloudland Canyon State Park.
Nice.
And so that was He's graduated a little bit to bigger parks, but yeah. So Sandy Springs, and City of Atlanta, we have access to everything living here. It's
nice.
great. So why would I tell somebody to move to Sandy Springs?
Yeah.
One of the reasons is the same reason that we give my wife and I give to new partners that are joining her practice and things like that. Your pocketbook. I mean, frankly, Sandy Springs taxes versus City of Atlanta taxes is a big selling point. Now, if you're really considering the sort of suburbs, and so you'd be considering Dunwoody as well, maybe that's not as big of a thing. But a lot of people, when they move from out of state, as opposed to maybe from within Georgia, closer in, they're just attracted to Atlanta. And I had the same thing when I moved here. I said, well, geez, if I'm going to come down here, I want to live in Atlanta. I'm not going to live in Dunwoody. I think my real estate agent might have showed me someplace in Dunwoody. I'm like, well, this is the suburbs. I'm not living here. But so if you're looking at Peachtree Hills or something like that, Ansley Park, which are beautiful areas, but then if you consider the compromises that go along with living there, taxes, size of the property that you can get for your money, those are some pretty significant compromises that you have to make. But to go back to sort of what we started talking about, I really also highlight Sandy Springs government, because you don't realize what a big impact that has on your day-to-day life. Everybody likes to get on their social media and complain about the national government, but that doesn't touch us all the time.
Right.
So, what we should be concerned about is what's happening in your city hall, and to not have to worry about Atlanta City Hall, and to be able to go right up to City Springs, and to be able to actually talk to councilmen and even the mayor. And their staff is great. I mean, that's such a big thing, especially if you're considering, starting or moving a family here. That's one of the biggest things I would point out.
Fantastic. Very good. Well, John, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks. I appreciate it as well.
Great job.